Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Kelly. Senator Hawley, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thanks to the witnesses for being here. Ms. Gottmuller, if I could start with you. You argued in your written testimony that Russia has a distinct advantage over the United States at present in terms of its ability to upload nuclear warheads and its ability to produce new warheads and missiles to carry them. And you write further, I'm going to quote you now, that the United States is not ready for a nuclear arms race and won't be ready until our new production facilities come online in the late 2020s or 2030s. Have I got that right? Is that an accurate statement? So let me just ask you about this. Are you worried, given all that, about China's upload and production capabilities relative to ours, given that Beijing is in the midst of a very pronounced nuclear buildup?
Sir, China's nuclear capabilities are in the course of being modernized. There's no question about it. But the Russians are master ICBM guys, and they have been for decades now, and they have been deploying heavy missiles that can carry a lot more warheads, such as the SS-18 missile. Now the Sarmat is being prepared for deployment. I'll just note, by the way, that both the Sarmat new heavy ICBM and the Avant-Garde hypersonic glide missile will fall under the central limits of the New START treaty, so they will have some constraints on them in that way. But I just want to note the mastery of upload, plus the large number of warheads that the Russians have. The Chinese certainly have that capability and that understanding of how to go about it. They just don't have the warheads that the Russians have.
Let me ask you this. You also say in your written testimony that the U.S. should not be the one to launch a nuclear arms race, but it must be ready to respond immediately to others who do. Is it fair to say that our ability to deter Russia or China from engaging in an arms race rests in part on our expanding our own nuclear forces?
Sir, I'm not sure we need to expand our nuclear forces, but we do need to modernize them, and we do need to put in place the industrial capacity to be able to build warheads and build missiles. And I really underscore this point that our industrial capacity has been allowed to lapse. And that goes, I agree with my colleagues who have spoken about the necessity of the expertise in addition to the missile facilities, the warhead facilities. We need the experts who are everything from the welders that Mr. Miller referred to up to the high-level engineers who help us to design and build our nuclear warheads.
Let me ask you about the follow-on to the New START treaty. Is your argument that a follow-on is in part a way to help delay further Russian expansion until we've restored our own production capability?
It gives us predictability, sir, about what the Russians are up to into the decade. I'm assuming that an agreement or treaty to follow New START would go into the 2030s, and our modernization is extending into the 2030s till almost 2040. To buy that kind of predictability into the next decade, in my view, is an important goal and in the national security interest of the United States.
Given that, I mean, just given the strategic balance there, what would Russia's interest be? I mean, why would we expect Russia to adhere to any such treaty, given their current, you might argue, strategic advantage in this area? I mean, why not just wait us out and then come to the table later with even more leverage?
Just as we are concerned about Russian capabilities to modernize, they are very concerned about our ability to modernize. They think of us as 10 feet tall. So I think we need to live up to that reputation, to be honest, sir, and get on with our own modernization. But that is the reason I think that they would come to the table. They want to make sure that we are not building up in a way that they cannot stomach. So that's the main point.
That's helpful. Thank you very much. Mr. Miller and Ambassador Edelman, if I could turn to you. You write in your joint statement that being able to absorb a first strike and retaliate against an aggressor while also holding in reserve sufficient forces to deter other near-peer competitors may in the future require larger numbers of deployed warheads than currently allowed under New START. Can you elaborate on that for me? Maybe both of you, either of you.
Yes, sir. So New START was done in 2010 when Russia was not a threat and China wasn't in the picture. Fast forward 12 years, Russia is a threat, China is a threat. The 1550 metric, in my judgment, does not apply to, say, a couple of years from now when we have to deter simultaneously Russia and China.
Ambassador, anything you'd like to add?
Yes, Senator. I think before you joined us, we talked a little bit earlier in the hearing about
the requirement, fundamental requirement of deterrence is to be able to absorb a first strike and have sufficient forces in reserve to inflict unacceptable damage on the adversary. If you posit a Russian first strike and are riding it out, our retaliation under 1550, I think, would essentially leave us denuded of any, reserve to deter the PRC. And we also, as my colleague has pointed out earlier, we can't completely rule out at some point that Russia and China, given their limitless partnership, as Xi Jinping and President Putin have described it, working together against the United States. Right now, you see Xi distancing himself a little bit from the failures in Ukraine, but we don't know what will happen 5 or 10 years from now.
My time has expired, but this is a very, very important topic, and I want to ask you more about how we can increase our arsenal without getting into the kind of arms race that I was just talking about with Ms. Gottmuller. So I'll give that to you for the record, and maybe a few other questions too. Thank you all for being here. Thank you, Mr.
Thank you, Senator Hawley. Senator Hirono, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to thank the panelists for